What is up, everybody? My name is Demo1138, and welcome to my first YouTube video. This topic today is a little out of left field, but it's something that I really wanted to talk about. Because as far as media franchises go, very few have had such a lasting impact on me as a person, and I'd really like to share that with all of you guys. And you know, of course, that we are talking today about The Tick. Now, a lot of people out there watching this are probably familiar with The Tick through the 90s cartoon show that was on Fox. So when you're thinking about The Tick, you're thinking about this guy. But when I think about The Tick, I'm thinking about this. This here is the first panel of the first issue of the first Tick comic series, created by Ben Edlund. And this is the quintessential Tick to me. We will be talking about the live action series, both of them, the 2001 Fox series and the 2016 Amazon series. And I want to talk about those because those are now currently on Netflix and you can go and watch them. And I hope by the time that you're done watching this video that you want to go and watch them. But before we get to the TV show, I kind of want to talk a little bit about how I came across The Tick. So, 1994, the cartoon came out. I was maybe 13 years old. And on the screen now you see this is the cover of the box set for season 1. This artwork, I believe, was done by Ben Edlund. But yeah, 1994, this came out. I was like 13, and there was just something about this show that just really spoke to me. I mean, you know, kids love superheroes, so I liked superheroes, but I also liked being silly and weird, man. And The Tick was silly and weird. Now, at the time, I really liked the show. I've grown to enjoy it less through exposure to other Tick media, namely the comics. But, you know, it's important to talk about because it was my gateway. It was probably a lot of other people's gateway, too. And, you know, the show, it was good. It was funny. The animation was kind of, it was a little subpar for the time. I don't even want to say subpar. I guess it was kind of average. But this was also around the time where you were getting stuff like Batman animated series in the 90s X-Men. And that stuff was maybe a little bit higher end. A different kind of show. The Tick was obviously more comedic. And the others were more action-based. So you'd probably get, you know, a bit more, bit higher animation quality. And, you know, the writing was good. It was funny, but it suffered from the 22-minute plus commercials, Fox Kids, Saturday morning cartoon format. So, you know, every story was wrapped up in 22 minutes, and that meant the writers couldn't spend a lot of time really developing anything outside of whatever gags they had going on for the episode. Standout for me is a little wooden boy. Go if you watch any of it, go watch that episode. I think that's that one in the Midnight Bomber. What bombs at midnight? Those I think really kind of tap into kind of the core ethos of the original Ben Edlund's Tick. And speaking of that, the adherence to the source material. You couldn't you could not make a children's show based on the source material strictly. You know, you just couldn't. As we'll see in a moment when we start talking about the comics, a lot of that stuff just could not make it into a kid's show. But you do see certain things in the cartoon. Arthur, for instance, as an accountant, was that concept was started in the cartoon show and has made an appearance in pretty much every form of Tick Media since then. Whether it's the 2001 live action, 2016 live action, the cartoon, all of them have Arthur as an accountant. And I like the 2001 scene with Mr. Fishladder, but we'll get to that. But yeah, this is how I got into it. And back in the day, there was a little store near me. Back in the day, you had to go to this store to purchase things. And there was a store called New England Comics, New England Comics. They were the publisher of the Tick. I'm sorry. Newberry Comics was the name of the store, which oddly enough was more of a music store. You would go there and get CDs, and they only had like a small section of comics in the back. But we would go there on the weekends, me and my friends, and poke around. And I found the Tick Omnibus #1, which was a collection of, I believe it was the first 6 issues of the comic book. And that right there, that threw me over the edge. This is when I came to like really, really, really love the Tick. And you're just going to see a couple of comic covers up on the screen as I talk about this. So it turns out, there have been many, many different Tick comics over the years, but the original run was 12 issues. It was both written and the artwork was done by Ben Edlund, the creator of the Tick. And the first 12 issues had kind of like 2 major storylines that kind of set the whole thing up. And these comics, you can see some of these goofy covers and everything, but there was a more, I don't even know how to describe this. There was a tone to these comics that, I don't want to say dark, because first off, it's an overused term that doesn't really mean anything anymore, but and somber isn't quite right, because the comic was still very funny, but it was taken a lot more seriously than the TV show. The plot was a little bit more rigorous. The characters were a little less static and cartoony. The Tick was a lot... Instead of that kind of cartoon humor, it was more of like an existential, absurdist kind of humor. And it did have its serious moments that were given like a completely different flavor by being surrounded by this kind of existential, absurdist humor. And as you can see in this cover here, Arthur, he was originally much chubbier than you'd imagine. And there's a reason for that. And I don't know if this has ever been said officially, but it's certainly been hinted at unofficially that the Tick and Arthur, it's Don Quixote and Sancho. And if you read the comics, you definitely see that. Except in a weird way, the Tick was kind of like an inversion of that, right? Where Don Quixote was delusional, you could say, into thinking that he was a hero when he was just a regular guy. Well, I think it's kind of inverted here in that Arthur was a guy with a heroic heart that was deluded into thinking he was a normal dude, right? If that makes any sense. So, I thought that was really interesting. I really love this series. A lot of good gags. The origin of pretty much every character that you know, plus more that you don't know, like Paul the Samurai, Man-Eating Cow. And we'll get into them actually a little bit. But yeah, no, these were great comics. I just reread them again recently. Enjoyed them as much as I did the last time I read them, which is probably like a decade ago at this point. I'm an old fart. I think the biggest problem with the first 12 issues of the Tick is that it ended on a cliffhanger that was never finished. And there is a part of me that is just hoping that one day Ben Edlund will come back and give us an official 13th issue. New England Comics, the publisher of the Tick, they did do a pseudo issue 13, and I'm not sure on the credits on that off the top of my head. And that's kind of like, oh, if there was an issue 13, this is what it would be. But and it's good and all, and it's nice to have, but it's not the issue 13. So maybe someday we'll get that. And another thing I think is interesting about the Tick is the Tick comic specifically is that they eventually make their way to New York to make a name for themselves as superheroes. They get there just to find that there is no crime in the city of New York, not the city. The city is Tick and Arthur's hometown. But there's no crime in New York because there's millions of superheroes. They're just everywhere. And, first off, this is a funny gag. But it's also kind of an interesting thing that, they're in the 90s, late 80s and early 90s, they're making a meta critique of the comic book industry itself, right? Where it's just oversaturated. There's just so many different comics and superhero teams, and everyone is just clamoring. There's like so many issue number ones of all different series because the secondary market was getting crazy in the 90s, as I assume we all know. And if you don't know, I would look into that because that was a big mess. But what I think is funny is that it's not just a critique that is once again becoming relevant. It's a critique that has always been relevant in that maybe we have collectively forgotten about. So they were the creators of the Tick, Ben Edlund, Bob Polio, etc. They were in the time, but they were ahead of the time at the same time. Now, outside of the initial 12 issues, there were some spin-offs that I think are notable. And these are, I think they're probably much lesser known, but equally as good as the original 12 issues. And that is, for instance, Paul the Samurai. Paul the Samurai was a character in the first story arc of the Tick, and he got two spin-off series actually. His first was in 1990. I'm not sure exactly how long it ran, but it was only 3 issues. And those were fun books. Paul the Samurai fighting the Boilermen, Reverend Billy, and Vernon Coop. It's good stuff. I would check it out if you can find them. I'm not sure if they're still reprinting these. But yeah, and Ben Edlund wrote this, I believe, and you can tell it's got his signature style all over it. It's that sense of humor. I have such a hard time describing the humor of the Tick, right? Because it's kind of like got that like British dryness to it, but at the same time that bombastic cartoon humor mixed in there seamlessly somehow. But it is also touching on like existential absurdism. It's nihilistic. It's psychological. It's really interesting. I cannot identify this kind of humor, and the problem with this kind of humor is that you either get it or you don't. Like, not only should you not explain the jokes, but like in this case, you really can't explain why some of this stuff is funny. You either get it or you don't. But yeah, and you can see that a lot in Paul the Samurai as well as the original 12 issues of the Tick, because Ben was writing it. And it was the artwork was done by Dave Garcia. He's a comic book artist. He's done some stuff with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the old comics and stuff. And his artwork is excellent. It matches up with Ben's artwork. It's really good. So yeah, Paul the Samurai had a spin-off. Man-Eating Cow had a spin. Paul the Samurai had 2 spin-offs. The second spin-off, and the Man-Eating Cow comics kind of intertwined together for like a kind of a crossover story that was really good. But Man-Eating Cow, my God, what a it's such a ridiculous premise, an insanely ridiculous premise. And this came out in '92 alongside the second Paul the Samurai series in '92. But it's such an absurd premise, but it was written by Clay Griffith, he's a prolific author, hundreds of books, maybe not hundreds, but over 100 books. He's super accomplished. He was a writer on The Simpsons for a while. Um, it's crazy that this insanely accomplished, uh, literary, educated guy wrote Man Eating Cow. And the thing is if you read Man Eating Cow, it shows. This is not this is not casual reading. You're gonna get knee deep in this. You're gonna get neck deep in it. And Alan Hopkins was the artist for this series, and he's done a variety of different comics. He's actually, I think, he wrote an issue of Tales Too Terrible to Tell, which is another New England comic original that precedes the Tick, but that was a horror comic, not quite the same thing. And then finally, there was a Chainsaw Vigilante, which this is one of my favorites. Ben also wrote this, and you can tell. And the storyline in this is fantastic. The quote unquote villain of the story is, again, this is another one that ends on a cliffhanger. This is kind of a running theme for Ben, I guess. But the main quote unquote villain of this story is surprising when you get to the end. There's a bit of a twist that, I don't know, it's kind of stuck with me. Maybe it's not like the deepest twist in the world. I'm not going to spoil it. You have to go and read it yourself. But it definitely stuck with me. And the Chainsaw Vigilante himself is like a really kind of interesting hero, anti-hero. He's the only real anti-hero in the Tick universe. Definitely the first. He's just sick of all the superheroes. He just leave me alone. Leave us alone. Go away. Nobody wants to see you dancing around in your pajamas in the streets. So he just goes around and terrorizes all these wannabe superheroes until they quit the job. This was the artwork was by Xander Cannon, and he does a phenomenal job. Completely different style than Ben, but it suits the character really well. I happen to have the the foil cover of this signed by Xander, which is quite nice. I actually got that by accident, and in fact, I have every piece of printed Tick material that's ever been printed. Everything from first printings of the first 12 issues, every other comic that came after that, the trading cards that I don't even know if you can get anymore. It's a lot, and I have it all. Some of it's signed because I'm lucky. But yeah, there are also a lot of other Tick comics that came after this um, that vary in quality. There's a lot of people that have had their hands in everything, but ones that really stick out to me is Big Blue Destiny and the Looney Bin. These were mini-ish series, and these were written and drawn by Eli Stone. And I love Eli Stone. Big Blue Destiny came out in '97. Looney Bin came out in '98. Now, a lot of this stuff that came after this, and some of the stuff that came before this, like in between the original series and this, a lot of that stuff kind of had more of the vibe of the cartoon, because all this stuff was made after the cartoon became popular, or at least started airing anyway. So a lot of people that wrote for the Tick and drew the Tick kind of followed that animated series kind of aesthetic and vibe, and things got a little sillier, and you lost a lot of those serious moments and stuff. But Eli Stone, man, outside of Ben Edlund, I think Eli Stone really understands the character of the Tick better than anybody, and it shows in these couple of series that he did. So yeah, Great series. These, I believe you might still be able to get. I don't know. These are kind of old too. Like I said, 97, 98. It's getting old. But yeah, so, these are some of the projects and some of the people that worked on a lot of the Tick stuff. There is so much more Tick comics, and I could get into it. I have them all, like Heroes in the City, Tick and Arthur, Days of Drama. There's so much. And if that is stuff, not to mention all the one shots, there's loads of one shots. So if this is something that you want to hear about, leave a comment and let me know, and maybe I'll make a video that's just solely dedicated to the comics. Although it would probably have to be a series of videos. There's a lot of comics. And before I move on from the comics, I just want to mention Bob Polio. Bob Polio is often credited as art director and lettering. And I'm going to be honest with you. So first off, he's not an easy guy to research. But second off, I have spoken with him before in the past. I have met him in person. And I'm pretty sure, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure he owned New England Comics or owned New England Comics at the time. He was also an artist. He did, there's a more Sunday Funnies version of the Tick and Arthur called the Tick and Artie that was written and drawn by Bob Polio. So, he does some art. He does a little bit of everything. But I'm pretty sure he ran New England Comics. And he's a great guy. He's a weird guy, but he's great. I remember being a kid. Like I said, back in the day, you couldn't necessarily hop online and purchase anything. So I would get the Tick catalog like maybe once a month in the mail, and it was a paper catalog where you could order issues of the Tick. And there was one time I made an order. I ordered a bunch of stuff, and I was waiting for it to come in. I don't know if it was late or if I was just impatient. So I called New England Comics, and it was Bob Polio that answered the phone. And not only was he not irritated to get a call like that, not only was he not irritated to have to deal with some little kid calling the store going, "Oh, where's my comics?" But he was super cool. It was almost like he knew who I was by looking at my order history. And we shot the shit on the phone for like good solid 15 to 30 minutes. Like he was so cool to give me the time like that, and I can only assume that that's how he was with all the fans. And then later, a few years back now, I say a few years back, maybe it's like 5 or 6 years ago, at Rhode Island Comic Con, I was lucky enough to, it's the only time I've ever been to a comic book convention, I was lucky enough to catch a Tick panel. Patrick Warburton was there along with some other people. But Bob Polio was there, and I saw him at a booth. It was great guy. Signed some stuff for me, gave me, a little custom drawing he did for me. I still have that. That's in a nice comic bag and everything. But yeah, Bob Polio, mysterious character, does not get as much credit. I hope to God that he's not problematic for some reason, because if he is, I don't know. In my experience, the guy was great. Yeah. So moving on along, I think the part of this conversation that I think is going to be more interesting to most of you guys is the live action Tick series. There are two. There was the 2001 Fox Tick series, and then there was the 2016 Netflix series, and we're going to go through them one at a time. So the Fox series came out in 2001. This had your typical sitcom structure. They were like 22, 25-minute episodes, contained storylines. There was nothing overarching. You could watch them in essentially any order. You should watch them in order. But if you watch them out of order, you wouldn't find yourself completely lost or anything. This was a bit more like the cartoon than the comic, although because this was a primetime sitcom, they could do a little bit more edgier stuff. But still, it did not reach that kind of darkish tone that the comic had. This was still very cartoony in nature. It was a real funny show, though. The writing was excellent. The Tick was, he said things that the Tick would say. Arthur was maybe a little exaggerated, but he was Arthur, and the supporting cast was really really good. Um, and Yeah, so the Tick, you probably know. Oh, it should be noted that the show itself was written by Ben Edlund, the creator, and some of the other cartoon writers. So the writing is, it's authentic Tick, despite being maybe a little corporatized. And the Tick obviously was played by Patrick Warburton. You know him from Seinfeld, Putty. Arthur was David Burke, uh, who does not have that many credits that I could find. Now, Batman, well, on the other hand, one of the best supporting characters. That was Nestor Carbonell. And his delivery as Batmanuel is perfect, but if you're coming from Real Enigma's channel and you're watching this, here's your Lost connection. Um, Nestor Carbonell played Richard Alpert in Lost. I mean, obviously, he's done a lot of TV and movies. He's pretty prolific. Um, but I just think that's funny that there's always the Lost connection, and here it is. And here's your Richard Alpert playing Batmanuel, who's kind of this sleazy, lazy superhero guy who doesn't really do much superheroing. He's in it for the image. He wants to get in the newspaper all the time. It's really funny. If you've seen Lost, definitely go watch this if you want to have if you want your concept of that character ruined in the best possible way. Go watch this show. And then there was Liz Vassy as Captain Liberty, and she's been on a lot of sitcoms and primetime television back in the day when network television was a thing. Um, it is definitely worth a watch. It's really quick to get through. There's only 9 episodes. There's a pilot episode, then 8 other episodes, and it never got picked back up. And I think that's for obvious reasons. It's super niche. It was really good, but it's super niche. And I'm kind of glad that it ended where it ended. If they had made more, I'd have been happy with that too. But no, it's good. Um, and out of the 9 episodes, there's one real notable episode that I really enjoy called Arthur Interrupted. And that has a character, Dr. Francis Peacock, that was played by Dave Foley, who is known for that show Kids in the Hall that was on way back in the day. I think that was Comedy Central, in which Arthur gets put into, against his will, Arthur gets put into like a superhero rehab clinic where they try to like brainwash him into being normal again. That was funny. If you're only gonna watch one, watch that one. But yeah, that's the Fox live action series in a nutshell. This is the Fox live action series in a nutshell. And it's good. That's on Netflix right now. You can watch the whole thing. It'll take you 4.5 hours, 4 hours to binge the whole thing. So go and do that if you can. I mean, I guess I will say that I have an ulterior motive with this. I want more Tick on television, so go watch the hell out of these shows. Um, Maybe they'll make more. Moving along, we're going to talk about the 2016 Amazon Tick series, which, oh boy, I have mixed emotions about this because as a TV series, I really, really, really enjoyed it. But like many Amazon and Netflix shows of the time, it was never given a fair shot. Like if you weren't getting all of the views all of the time, they were just going to discontinue your show. It's a little less like that nowadays. I think these streaming services that when they start making their own television programs, like I think they understand now that the audience wants to see these things through to some kind of end. So luckily, a lot of the shows that we get now, like shows that I watch, for instance, like From, is going to be completed, and we're assured of that as an audience. So we can stick through it. It's good. But that was not the case when the 2016 live action Tick came out. This was a totally different thing than the 2001 live action series. This was an ongoing comedy drama, I guess you could say. And this was not like the cartoon. It was not cartoonish. and goofy. I mean, it's a little goofy. It's the Tick, but it wasn't super super silly. But it also wasn't like the comic either. There wasn't quite as much of that dark streak that came through this show. But the budget was much higher. The costumes were better, and the performances by the actors were awesome. Um, it was definitely higher budget. Peter Serafinowicz played the Tick, and you might know him from Shaun of the Dead, a couple other places. And when I first saw him as the Tick, I saw him and I was like, I don't know about this. But then you hear him talk, and you're like, holy shit, that's the Tick. He nails it. He understands this character. He knows how to play this character. It's perfect. Then Griffin Newman played Arthur, and he nails this character too. And in fact, I met Griffin in person at that same Comic-Con. He was kind enough to sign some stuff for me. I say kind enough. That means I paid him to do it, but he was happy to do it. Well, he was at least happy to be paid. But he does a good job with Arthur. But I will say, so they kind of flip the characters in a certain sense, right? So in the original Tick series, the Tick starts off in a mental institution. He's a crazy person, right? Whereas in the Amazon series, Arthur starts off not in an institution, but he's on a lot of psychotropic drugs, a lot of prescription drugs, because people think he's crazy, right? So instead of the Tick being the crazy one, Arthur's the crazy one, which maybe in terms of the writing of the show, maybe it's weird, right? Because like the Tick is the main character, but he can't carry the show because he's such an oddball and he's random, right? You need an anchor for the guy, and that's Arthur. So the show is almost more about Arthur than the Tick. And I say almost, it might actually just be about Arthur, right? So some of those more interesting character development beats were shifted over to Arthur for this show, which isn't bad, but it's not, in my opinion, like super authentic. It's not bad. If you've never read the comics, it wouldn't even matter to you. You'd just be able to watch this. Now, his Arthur's sister Dot, who in the comics was a very plain, unassuming, boring character on purpose. But in the show, in the 2016 show, Dot, Arthur's sister, took a bit more of a main role. In fact, she's like really important to a lot of the plot. And I have mixed feelings about this because I like Dot as the counterfoil to the Tick's madness, like somebody who's so painfully normal to contrast with the absurdity of these two grown men in tights jumping on rooftops, But that being said, I don't mind what they did with Dot. She was an interesting character, and she was played by Valerie Curry, which you people might know from a much worse superhero show called The Boys. I will die on this hill. The Boys is not a good show. Come at me in the comments, and maybe I'll make a video on that. The Boys is not a good show. I will take an episode. I would trade all of The Boys for one episode of the Tick live action from Amazon. Yeah, well, that's a topic for another time. Get mad. Be mad about it. Excuse me. In addition to the Tick and Arthur and Dot, you got Scott Spicer as Overkill, who's kind of like your Punisher style superhero, a lot more violent, willing to kill a man. In fact, that's a requirement, I think, for his character. He is, as I mentioned, played by Scott Spicer, who is actually, funnily enough, a member of the Blue Man Group, which, the irony, maybe they should have cast him as the Tick. He's used to being blue. I don't know. I'm not in Hollywood. I don't know. But yeah, anyway, Overkill, his character, is kind of, he defected from this superhero agency called Aegis. And along with himself and his gear, he stole a vehicle named Danger Boat, who had gained sentience. And Danger Boat, despite being a boat, is actually a really funny and entertaining character who is voiced by who else other than Alan Tudyk. Um, Seems like an appropriate role for him. And that dynamic with this really kind of angry, violent overkill in his boat who just kind of wants to play techno music and party, like, it's really fun. And then, not to get into spoiler territory, Doc gets involved with them, and it's good stuff. It's good stuff. But I would say, for my money, the best performance is the season 1 villain, the Terror. This is played by Jackie Earle Haley. He's an Academy Award winning actor. He's a director, a producer. You know him as Rorschach from The Watchmen. But oh my fucking God, excuse my French, this guy, he nails this role so good. Watch just for him, if nothing else. The Terror, if you didn't know, he's a classic supervillain from like the 40s and 50s, and he's still around doing his stuff. It's wild, and he plays this. How can I even describe it? He's asked to give some maniacal laughter, and he says, "You haven't done anything maniacally funny." Oh, and he's such a bully. He's mean, and he's a bully, but he's so fucking funny about it. It's absolutely worth a watch just for this guy alone. Um, yeah, and the unfortunate bit about this show is it ended at season 2 with a cliffhanger. Um, so, you kind of get what you get with that kind of television from that time period. It's going to end. And I say cliffhanger, it's not like a total, like, to be continued moment. The storyline of season 2 is more or less wrapped up, but they do leave a couple of loose ends. Um, and they were definitely working towards a season 3. They definitely had a season 3 at least mapped out, if not completely written. And I am personally a little disappointed because season 3 was going to involve Thrakorzog, and if you know anything about the comics and the cartoon, you know who Thrakorzog is. If you don't know, go read the comics and watch the cartoon. Then you'll know who Thrakorzog is and why it's a big deal that he was going to be in the 3rd season. Um, there was also a couple of other threads that they left open. Like there was he's one of the main characters. I didn't include a slide for him. Superior. Not my favorite character of the show. He's your typical like Superman stand-in. I guess a more contemporary comparison you could make is Homelander, except he has more depth than Homelander. Homelander is one of the most shallowest two-dimensional characters I've ever seen. But yeah, there was a plot thread that was left with him as well that we're just never going to get. Even if they do make another Tick TV show, I doubt that it's going to continue on with this. I think it'd be really difficult for them to get all the cast back, and it just probably wouldn't be the same without the same cast. But yeah, this again, this is on Netflix currently. The episodes are 45 to 55 minutes, something like that. There's I think 12 episodes in the first season and 10 episodes in the second. And despite some of the cliffhangery bits, all the stories get wrapped up well enough for it to be satisfying. So don't let that dissuade you from going to watch the show, because it's definitely worth a watch. It's got that kind of humor. Again, if you don't get it, you won't get it. It couldn't possibly be explained to you. So hopefully you're the type that gets it. At the very least, you should give it a shot and see if you like it. Because if you do like it, you might want to work your way backwards and start digging up some of the old comics. Because for me, that's where my heart is when it comes to the Tick. Love the comics. And you never know. The Tick, he kind of comes and goes. So who knows when the next iteration will be? Ben Edlund, the creator, he's gone on record a couple of times saying that, like, when he did the cartoon, he fully intended on like selling out. But then as he went through the process, he was like, nah, you know what? I This is kind of like my brain baby, and I want to keep him. You know, so that's why the Tick doesn't just resurface all the time, because I think Ben, really wants, when he does it, he wants to do it right, and I respect that, because the original Tick was just so special, so unique, um, and yeah, go out and check this stuff out. Um, I really hope you guys have enjoyed this discussion on the Tick. Uh, I hope you guys go out and watch the shows, and maybe there's going to be some interest for this that is built, and we get some more. That'd be dope. But yeah, in either case, this is going to kind of wrap it up for now. I have been Demo1138, and this was our talk about the Tick Talk. Yeah. And if you enjoyed this video, here comes all the YouTube stuff. If you enjoyed it, please, give the video a like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. It helps. It helps. You don't need to hear it from me. And please, if you are so inclined, please check out my Patreon. I have a link in the description and a link in the video title. Currently on the Patreon, I have a variety of different tiers. They're all the same currently. Obviously, this is my first video, so what am I going to do, right? Like, I'm going to wait to, if I get some patrons through my Patreon, we'll talk about it. We'll see what kind of bonuses people want, and we'll make adjustments. But for the time being, if you do subscribe to my Patreon, everybody who does, we'll either shout them out in future episodes, or we'll put their names up on the screen, or a combination of both. But, brand new channel, budding channel, budding creator. So any little bit helps, and not only does it help, but it's insanely appreciated. But in either case, thank you for tuning in. And for my next video, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna do something on the show Silo, which is streaming on Apple TV, and that's something I think a lot of my potential audience is gonna like. That's gonna be an interesting one for sure. So definitely tune into that. Thank you for indulging me. I know the Tick might not be the most popular thing in the world, but it is something that I really, really wanted to talk about. So thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time in Demo113 out.